Reading shouldn't only be about entertainment. I don't believe booktubers who say they read over 100 books a year. I really debated putting this one in here because I know I'm going to have a super unpopular opinion on this one. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Leonie, and if you're new here, hey, there's a fly buzzing around. I can see it. So maybe if you hear buzzing, that's Mr. Fly. Maybe he'll make a cameo. I feel like I make a lot of videos giving my hot takes, but I thought it would be fun to respond to your guys' hot takes. I did this like 2 years ago, so I thought it would be fun to kind of do an updated video, see what your guys' hot takes are nowadays in 2025. I like that we are a community of people that are very opinionated, but we don't always agree with each other, and that is okay. So I'm actually really interested in seeing also your guys' takes on all of these hot takes in the comments. BookTok seems like huge propaganda to get everyone to read the same books. I hear this one so often, like, oh, BookTok is only people constantly talking about the same books. This is why BookTok sucks, because they're only talking about Colleen Hoover and Sarah J. Maas. Now, although this is technically correct and critique worthy, I disagree with this idea that it's like propaganda or a conscious effort from the people on BookTok, the booktokers. What's really going on is the fact that an algorithm, like a super heavy algorithm like TikTok, will just recommend to you whatever is already popular, whatever has already proven to get the most attention, to get the most engagement, the most likes, that will be pushed to you. And everything that isn't like super popular will not be shown to you because, you know, TikTok is a business. They want to make sure that people see the stuff that is like the most popular thing, the common denominator basically, because statistically that's just what's most likely to keep you watching. So you're gonna be seeing all the same books over and over again, all these books that are already popular. Doesn't mean that there isn't anyone else on BookTok talking about other books. On the contrary, there are many people talking about many different books, but if you start scrolling on BookTok, you just get to see the popular things because that's how the TikTok algorithm works. And I do think that that is a problem, that we have a community, an online conversation about books that is ruled by an algorithm, but this is not the fault of booktokers. Having a monthly TBR can be intimidating and put the wrong kind of pressure on reading. As you may know, I don't do monthly TBRs or to be read lists anymore. I used to make them all the time and then I never stuck to them. Maybe that says more about me than the concept of having a TBR. I am firmly of the camp of people that is like, let's not hustlerize the hobby of reading, okay? Let's not turn this into a job or a goal that we need to meet every month. So yeah, absolutely no problems with people who like to make monthly TBRs because it just really helps them. By no means do I want anyone to feel like you have to do that because it's really common and popular within the online book community. My hot take, I think the fact that so many people call themselves mood readers is because it's actually just very natural to just pick up whatever book you're in the mood for. Why did we have to turn that into a term on BookTube? Sprayed edges are overrated. Oh, I agree. I feel like this is definitely my unpopular opinion. I don't really like the look of sprayed edges. Because to me, and I don't, this is gonna sound so weird, but to me it just makes the book look like less of a book. I don't know what it is, but like having these really intricate sprayed edges, it's really cool from like an art perspective, but it makes the book feel like a box and not an actual book. I don't know, this, I feel like this is, no one's gonna understand what I'm saying here, but I like the look of pages. Looking at the beige white of the pages, I just like that. Preferably deckled edges. That is like my favorite little thing that publishers do to spice up a book. But I would never pay extra to get sprayed edges. I do think they're really cool for collector's editions or like extra editions, but generally speaking, if I'm just reading a book, I want it to look like a regular book. Explicit spice scenes tend to ruin a good plot, and there were actually many of you that submitted something along the lines of like spice ruins a book, spice makes book shallow. And here I also actually heavily disagree with this idea that as soon as a book has any spice in it, it is now ruined or it has now become shallow. You can write spice in a way that it adds something to the story. Usually it says something about the characters, about the relationship that they have with each other and how that is evolving. It is difficult to write a good spice scene. Just like writing any other type of scene, there is a technique to it. You can do it well and you can do it poorly. I think when people think of spice, they mostly think of really poorly written ones, and yeah, those are not good. There are plenty of books that are spiced that are like literary additions to the book. I'm thinking of The Safekeep by Elle van der Woude, which has been nominated for a Booker Prize and the Woman's Prize for Fiction. It has a ton of explicit spice scenes and all of them add to the story. They are all beautifully written. The book would not be the same without them, but I just wish people knew that it is very much possible to write literary spice. We may call it espice. Maybe if we give it a French name, people will take it more seriously. This one I feel personally attacked by. I will never understand people who don't remember anything from the book they just read. That's me. That's me. This is about me. I also don't understand it, but it just happens to me. I have a terrible memory, and I hate it when I finish a book and someone asks me about the book and I'm just like, I actually already forgot what exactly happened. What exactly were these scenes? I understand that you don't understand this because we also don't understand it ourselves, I think. Not every sad book is deep. Yes! Oh, and the other way around. Not every happy book is shallow. I feel like I've talked about this like a gazillion times already. We have this idea that the moment something is sad and has a bad ending and is tragic, that means it's super deep and super interesting. There's nothing more intellectually esteemed as being a tragic figure. Whereas happiness, well, surely you're just stupid then. Now, don't get me wrong, of course, many tragic and sad stories are beautiful, but because they are well written, because they are done well. Sadness, like any emotion, can have depth or be more shallow. And people often forget that there can also be depth to happiness. And also, we've all been teenagers, we've all had like a period, I don't know, maybe I'm outing myself here, but I think a lot of us have had like a period where you write like really sad poems and really sad diary entries because you're 14 and everything sucks, but none of that was deep. Maybe you thought yourself to be super deep and philosophical, but really you were just a 15-year-old rambling about that girl in class that you didn't like because she was with your crush. Reading a lot of books doesn't make you well read. So for example, reading from only one genre. Well, I mean, we can deconstruct this however much we want, but you know, what does it mean to be well read? Does it mean that you read a certain type of books, certain type of like literary or esteemed novels? Other people just mean that you've read a lot of different types of books. Some people will mostly refer to having read nonfiction when they say well read. So that's my first question that you can think about. What does it mean to be well read? Personally, I would say, well, actually, what do I mean? What do I mean with that? Questions. My instinct when I think of well-read people, I do think of people who have read a lot of the classics, a lot of well-known books, a lot of different types of books. Like you have a wide variety of books under your belt. But I think this is important. I don't think there's anything wrong with not being well-read in that sense. We all read for different reasons and not everyone has interest in reading all the well-known and classic titles. Nothing wrong with having your own little niche. Oh god, oh my god, this one, I really debated putting this one in here because I know I'm going to have a super unpopular opinion on this one. There should be zero smut in young adult books. I have seen this opinion kind of drifting around the internet here and there, that there should just be nothing explicit, no spy scenes, if the book is young adult and so targeted at teenagers. Okay, maybe this is just a very Northern European take of me, because we tend to be pretty open and direct about these kind of things, but I think this is I highly disagree with this. Here's the thing, teenagers are gonna find spicy content somehow, okay? Many teenagers are out there reading very explicit fan fiction. The idea of not putting any explicit content in books targeted at teenagers is, first of all, very naive to think that that way you can somehow protect them from it altogether. And two, I genuinely think irresponsible. These kinds of things are part of coming of age. They are part of a lot of teenagers' experience. I actually think that it is good that coming of age stories also include these kinds of topics like first times and being safe. I actually think it's good if young adult novels show healthy examples of it and write about it in a way that can be relatable as well as educational. Completely like taking it out and like protecting people from it, to me feels like preaching abstinence instead of doing sex ed. Ooh, okay. Okay, the next one is, I think, the most mentioned hot take by you guys, and that was that tropes are spoilers, and describing books by their tropes, like enemies to lovers, only one bed, is actually spoiling the plot. Interesting. Now, technically, I agree. When you hear that a book is enemies to lovers, that kind of spoils part of the plot. If you know there's gonna be a one bed trope, if you know there's gonna be like a found family, you are spoiling a little bit of the plot. But, and this is my hot take, I think people can be a little oversensitive about spoilers, because to a certain extent, knowing what's going to happen in the book is the reason that we pick it up. Yes, these tropes technically are spoilers, but you pick up a romance book because you know they're gonna end up together and it's gonna be a happy ending. Knowing a little bit of the things that are going to happen in the book makes it easier for you to pick up a book that you think you will like, because you already know that it's going to contain some things that you tend to enjoy. I don't think a book is going to be ruined if you already know a little bit of what's going to happen. If a book is completely ruined because you know what's going to happen, I don't think you wrote a very good book. I don't know. A contemporary romance cannot be 5 stars. That's a hot take. I disagree. If I'm interpreting this correctly, what is implied here is that any contemporary romance is just never going to be that good, just because of the genre, which I already think is a little bit reductive. Like, within every genre there are better and there are worse books. And secondly, yes, maybe a contemporary romance is not gonna have like a similar like literary style or theme. I personally don't rate all genres on the same scale. I think you should rate a book based on what the book is trying to do. If you're gonna read a contemporary romance, rate it based on whether it achieved the goals that a contemporary romance sets out to achieve. If you're gonna read a book of literature, rate it based on what a book of literature is setting out to achieve. The goal of a contemporary romance is generally to be feel-good fiction. So if you're gonna dock it stars because it wasn't like literarily written enough, you're not properly engaging with it in the way that it should be engaged with. The same way, if you're gonna dock stars on a piece of literary fiction because it just wasn't enough action scenes, then you're also disingenuously engaging with what that book is trying to do. Different books are trying to achieve different things and should be reviewed in different ways. This one is also about tropes. Authors telling readers the tropes in their book is a sign of a poorly written book. Heavily disagree. Authors describing their books based on tropes, they're probably just doing that because that is really popular right now. It's a very popular way of marketing. I personally think this is because of short form content like TikTok and Reels, where you have to be like really quick with describing a book in a way that is like instantly recognizable to a viewer that could scroll away within like a half a second. So describing books based on tropes is a success formula for Instagram and TikTok. And that's why authors are probably encouraged to also describe their books in that way. Doesn't mean that it's a bad book, it's just playing into marketing trends. Which is sad that the way we talk about books is so influenced by the algorithms of the social media that we use, but I don't think it says anything about the book itself. I've made a whole video about like my opinion on tropes and book tropes and what it says about how we talk about stories. I will link it in the description. Oh, okay. Book girly equals romance smut reader. And I hate this narrative. So if I'm interpreting this correctly, you dislike this idea that a book girly, like a girl who likes reading, like a young girl who likes reading, is a romance smut reader. And I really agree with this. I think this has become kind of like a new idea that people have, a certain type of reader. If you're like a young girl who likes to read, that must mean that you only read romance and smut, which is not true, because there are many book girlies. I have opinions about that wording as well. But there are many book girlies out there that read all kinds of stuff. It kind of reminds me, because I've been in this online community for a very long time. I know I'm quite the veteran actually. Been here for almost 10 years. I know, really aging myself here. It used to be that people would always assume that I must only read young adult books. That was like the assumption people made. They saw me, they saw the places that I was living in, the way that I filmed my videos, the way I speak, and they just assume, oh, you must be only reading those like young adult books, you know? This is now still happening, but instead of assuming that these girlies are only reading young adult books, there is this assumption that, oh, you must only read smut. Oh, you must only read those like silly romance novels, those silly BookTok novels. It's just another stereotype that has come into play. Okay, well, BookTok has ruined the book industry. Damn, okay. There's so much you can say about it, and I feel like I have so many other videos with my extensive opinion on BookTok. But if I were to somehow summarize it into like a few sentences, in which we inevitably lose context, of course, I would say that BookTok has had a really positive influence on the book industry, in the sense that it has gotten so many people into reading and has gotten so many people talking about reading and talking about books, which is amazing for such a struggling industry. I do not like the fact that an algorithm and like a social medium has so much impact on the way we talk about books. Like the aforementioned only seeing popular books pop up, or authors having to talk about their books in terms of tropes. I think there's something insidious about a platform whose primary goal is to make money with advertisements is so heavily influencing the book industry. I think we can be critical of that. Generally speaking, I tend to critique TikTok and BookTok as a platform, but I tend to defend booktokers, people who make the content. Nonfiction is underrated. Learning about random things is fun. I agree. I love nonfiction. And it makes me so sad that a lot of people are intimidated by it, because it's really not that intimidating. You don't have to start with reading Nietzsche's work. You can literally read about anything that you find interesting. If you like watching random science TikToks, If you like reading random interesting Wikipedia pages, if you like reading about real life stories, things that happened in real life, you're gonna like nonfiction. I have made an entire video that is an in-depth guide to beginning with nonfiction reading. I will link it in the description. I highly recommend watching that video. That is my goal here, is to get more people to read nonfiction. It is not as intimidating as you think. And for me, it's also a great way to get out of a reading slump. If I find myself not being drawn to any story I pick up, I read nonfiction, and usually I do get into that. I love long chapters in books. Are you okay? One of the worst feelings is when I'm reading on my e-reader and it tells you how many minutes until you finish the chapter, and I see like anything above 10 minutes. I get so discouraged. I know it doesn't make sense because usually I will read multiple chapters and I will read for more than 10 minutes, but just the idea of having to wait so long before I feel it's actually so problematic, before I feel the achievement of having finished a chapter, it's too much. I like the constant feeling of, ooh, I finished something. Oh, just one more chapter, you know? Reading shouldn't only be about entertainment. Interesting. Oh, I have a nuanced take on this. Generally, I think there's nothing wrong with reading for entertainment. Just like sometimes it's fun to watch reality TV, sometimes it's fun to watch your comfort TV show. Just like that, sometimes you just want to read a book that's pure feel-good, pure escapism. But I will always encourage people to also try other things. Not just for reading, also when it comes to those TV shows and those movies. I will always encourage people to also try something that is a little bit more interesting, that engages you in a more intellectual way, that has a message to it, that prompts you to think critically. I do not think that reading should be exclusively that, and like specifically when it comes to books you need to do the critical thinking. I think it goes for all media. It is a wonderful experience to consume stories that make you look at the world in a different way. That is satisfying in its own way. Annotations, especially for spicy or nonsense parts, are annoying with doodles all over the page. As someone who personally annotates very minimally, I still disagree with this. I know some people get super annoyed when they see people on TikTok or BookTube have like extensive tabs and annotating and colors and everything. And to those people, I just have to say, it's not your book. Let people do that. They're harming no one. They're harming no one. If people find it fun to engage with their physical book and engage with the story by constantly tabbing and annotating and highlighting with colors, let them. Seriously, let them. Maybe you would never do that or think it's over the top. Well, good news. You don't have to. And if you think that it's all just fake and they're just doing it for views, again, I don't care. Let them. I fail to see how this is in any way harmful. Nowadays, there are very poor quality books everywhere. Yes, there are a lot of poor quality books out there, but it's not a nowadays thing. There have been mass-produced romance novels for decades. There have been like really cheaply produced penny dreadful horror stories. Shitty books are a thing of all times. It's just that now you get to see them because they come on your For You page. It makes you feel like this is a new thing, that newly poor books are being put out everywhere. No, it's just that before this, you didn't see them because people were reading them within their own little communities and you never had to see it. Oh, this one's interesting. I don't believe booktubers who say they read over 100 books a year. And this is another one that I've seen very, very often, is people questioning whether booktubers can really read over 100 books a year. I don't read over 100 books a year, not nearly. I think like within the book space, I'm a very, very slow reader. I read around 30-40 books a year. But here's the thing, okay? Just a little math exercise. If you read 100 books of 350 pages, spread out over an entire year, you would need to read around 95 pages a day. For me, that's too much. I don't get to read that every day. But it's not impossible. When I was still in university, I had to commute 2 hours to and 2 hours back every day. I got a lot of reading done in that time. I know people in real life that read over 100 books a year, that aren't even book influencers. And these are just people who read during breakfast, read during lunch, read during their commute, listen to audiobooks a lot, read before bed. Think about, like, what is your screen time? I just have to ask, what is your screen time? If you can look at your phone for 6 hours a day, it's not that inconceivable that a person could be reading for 2 hours every day. But this one actually genuinely made me think it's overconsumption to read more than 100 books a year. I thought that was super interesting because technically speaking, for any other thing, if you would tell me that you like consume over 100 a year, I would be like, okay. Buying tons and tons of clothes, new clothes every year, that's overconsumption. Constantly switching out your furniture and decor is overconsumption. Constantly starting new video games when you haven't fully finished the old ones could also be considered overconsumption. To me, the core of overconsumption is constantly getting new things that you don't actually need. So I would say buying hundreds of books every year without actually reading them, that is overconsumption. But if you actually read all of these books, I don't think it's overconsumption. You're not putting a strain on any resources here. But I will say, I think maybe the idea of reading as much as possible and as fast as possible and having a constant focus on the number of books that you are reading instead of just, taking your time with each book does start to feel very similar to the thinking behind overconsumption. Of always needing more, of not being mindful and taking your time, but instead focusing on numbers. So although I don't technically think it counts as overconsumption, I do think it's really interesting to call it that. We are underutilizing libraries and secondhand books. Fully agree with this one, and I think I'm part of that. I never get my books at the library, and I will admit, it's a materialistic thing. I like owning a book that I've read. I like having a physical copy of a story that I experienced. But I think maybe I could try browsing the secondhand part of a bookstore a little bit more often. It's super toxic, but I love me some shadow daddy villain romance. You know what? Me too sometimes. I have a lot to say about them, but they can be enjoyable. I think this is a very relatable feeling that especially I think people in my audience have, where on the one hand you're like, I can see all of these toxic elements in these books, but also I'm kind of enjoying them. And I think both can exist at the same time. You can't separate the art from the artist. I agree. I think any opinions that an artist has, or let's talk about writers in this case, is going to inevitably seep into their stories, and mostly because money is involved here. If the author that we're talking about is still alive, you reading their books and paying money for their books is directly putting money towards that author, which the author can then use in whatever way that they like. This is why I don't want to support J.K. Rowling, because giving her money means you are actively putting money in the pockets of a woman who actively puts money towards anti-trans organizations. It's really nice, the idea of like, oh, art is something in a completely separate realm. It is in the realm of the art. We must be able to talk about anything and describe it and talk about it as this independent thing. But unfortunately, in reality, there's money involved, and money is power. And whoever you're gonna give money, you're gonna be giving power. This one's insane. I'm sorry. I don't care if there's a map in a fantasy book. I never look at it. Sir, you and I are not the same. It is like the first thing that I look at when I buy the new book. Maybe even if I don't even plan on reading it soon, I am looking at that map. I am looking at the art, the illustration, the little place names. I love it. Do I forget to reference it while reading it? No, actually I really don't. Every time a place name is mentioned, I am like flipping back, being like, ooh, that's there. Oh, they're here now. That's so fun. Yeah, I'm sorry, you're wrong. It's okay to be wrong sometimes, but you are wrong. Romantasy and cozy fantasy is good for the genre. Now, within like fantasy readers, especially on the epic fantasy side, people tend to kind of look down on romantasy and cozy fantasy, saying that it's like ruining the genre, ruining fantasy, blah blah blah. Now, I know that in the past I've expressed that I tend to not really enjoy most cozy fantasies or romantasies, but I don't have a problem with the genre en sich. In fact, I think for a long time within like epic fantasy, there has been certain conventions that the fantasy genre has kind of tied itself to, and with the popularity of romantasy and cozy fantasy, we are finally kind of breaking out those conventions, and that ultimately is a good thing for a genre. Me as a woman can read and like Dostoyevski or hooks and smut. My brain can take it. This is the take I love to end on. I think it is the core of my belief, and that is you can do both. You don't need to be exclusively a critical, intellectual reader. You don't need to be exclusively someone who only reads for entertainment. You can do both. Books are a medium of wide variety. Why not make the most of it? Oh man, I'm really warm right now. The takes were too hot. Or maybe it's the fact that I'm drinking hot tea and lighting candles on a hot summer day. I love hot takes. It is also my favorite thing to ask when you're getting to know someone, is just ask them about their hot take. If they have a hot take on books or feminism or Sabrina Carpenter. They probably do. I love that you guys have so many hot takes. I'd much rather have an audience that is full of like hot takes that I disagree with than having an audience that is just kind of lukewarm about anything, you know? Anyway, I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you soon in another video very soon. Goodbye!